I've always made things as long as I can possibly remember, really. And I got sort of involved with using tools from the age of probably about 8 or 9. In my sort of early 30s, I suppose it was, I embarked upon a degree in design and visual art, specialising in contemporary craft at Unitec. So that was kind of like a dream for me, really, because I could express all of these ideas that had kind of been building up in me for so many years. I'd always keep sort of notebooks and drawing pads and stuff like that. And it was great just to put all of these ideas to the test and sort of give myself the time to do that and be surrounded by like-minded people and, sort of influential and inspirational tutors there as well. So that's kind of where my work, my personal work sort of began, I suppose, was in my early 30s. I've always had an interest in materials and sort of the value of materials and how that's sort of perceived and how that value changes from person to person, I suppose. I always remember from a really young age, there's this local guy who used to deal in trash and scrap and stuff. And he used to say, I mean, I know it's a total cliche, like one man's trash is another man's treasure. But from an early age, hearing that sort of stayed with me, and that sort of change of perception of looking at materials in a different way. So there's kind of that. And then a lot of it came about through necessity, really, as well, being a poor student and not being able to afford new materials. And I've always kind of had my eye out and gone to sort of jumble sales back in England and scrap yards, and I just find them fascinating places to go to. I love diving in skips, get in there and get involved, drag all the stuff out. And working in the sort of film and TV and building industries, there's loads of waste within that. So I kind of really like to utilise that and bring it all back home and hoard it and organise it all. I'm an organised hoarder, not one of those ones that everything's everywhere. It's organised. Becomes acceptable then. My last year at uni, when I found a whole load of balustrades, and they were at like a reclamation yard, and they were just all stacked up. There must have been about 200 of them just out in the yard, and for some reason they spoke to me, man. I just looked at them, and en masse, they're just really a fascinating thing. So I bought as many as I could afford at the time, which was only about 20 or something. But I took them back to the workshop and I kind of looked at them for a while, and they sort of sat in the corner, but I really found something interesting in them. And then I started slicing them up, and then sort of realizing that you kind of accentuate that profile shape by cutting it. And then there was this whole kind of thing of what lies beneath the surface of a material once you kind of slice it up. And they look really old and crap when you look at them, but when you cut them open, they're generally this beautiful timber in there, And that kind of, that change between something being really old and kind of distressed and just looking like absolute junk to something quite beautiful on the inside, I find quite engaging. I really enjoy that kind of confusion, I quite like to be finely placed on the line between furniture, and function and form is an interesting subject, I think, what follows what and which comes first and which is more important, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think both kind of feed each other, because some things I make really are furniture, they're usable furniture, and but it has a sculptural element as well, and sometimes vice versa. I just quite like that kind of the play between the two, I suppose, and they tend to sort of feed each other, really. There's one kind of exists because the other one exists, if you like. And I was thinking about kind of my practice from a personal point of view, and how you can kind of go down these avenues, these roads, if you like, and sometimes you go down dead ends and then you come back and you get back on the kind of the metaphorical highway, I suppose, if you like. And so that kind of really rung true for me as well. And then where the silhouettes pass, I was making this piece just here, and then you can see, obviously, the silhouettes are passing. So it was kind of just like that sort of moment. Oh yeah, that's what I'm going to call the show. There you go. So I became sort of quite engaged in sort of researching ancient Greece and the Romans as well, and that kind of shape and that form got me really interested. And then so I started making these sort of shapes of the urns and the bottles, and then this sort of technique kind of married into it as well, which I've been working on. And it's a technique that I use with a skew chisel on the lathe. So I turn the actual shape originally, and then I get the skew chisel and I push it into underneath the grain and then lift up that grain, and it causes this kind of fluffy, furry sort of technique, which I just found really interesting. And I'd done it a while ago as well, and then I kind of I put it aside, but I thought that's really interesting. I don't know how that's gonna work into something, you know. So the two kind of married each other really, I suppose. And then I used that technique on it. And again, it follows on from what I was doing of sort of lifting the surface of the material and looking what's sort of underneath. And it reminded me of all sorts of things as well. Like as a kid, there used to be sort of local gypsies in our area, and they used to do a lot of green woodworking, and they'd use draw knives and stuff like that and make these sort of flowers by pulling the draw knife and then folding over. So there's this kind of layering of the material, the surface of the material, which I found really interesting as well. I speak to my neighbour quite a lot, who's lived in our area all of his life. He's got a lot of land on the end of the peninsula, and we're good friends, you know, so I go and walk all over his land, and he's fine with that. And you can walk up through this sort of macrocarpa wood, which is quite dark and mysterious, and you come out at the very top, and you're sort of on this plateau which overlooks the whole of Kaipara Harbour, which is fantastic. It's amazing, beautiful view. I walked up there, and you know, this expansive view, and then these sort of hills in the background and the harbour and everything. And it just got me to thinking about sort of giants in the landscape and people laying down within the landscape. And then I started to think about myself within the landscape and my place in the landscape, and how we as our family have sort of made that our home now. So it's kind of connected with my place in this place. If you like. So I went home, and I was, you know, my mind was kind of racing with this sort of idea of all these ideas floating around, and I stripped down to my boxer shorts, and I got Lou, my partner, crikey, and I got Lou to trace around my body shape, which is what this is here, yeah. And then I made this piece out of it. And there's two of them because they come in two halves, you know, yeah. There were some pieces that didn't make it in. They didn't make the grade, you know. But I think that's you know, you always make mistakes, or you've got to kind of make this work that you're not happy with to get to the work that you are happy with. So I don't see it as sort of time lost, even if you've got a whole pile of artwork that you've made that you're not happy with at all. You know, you needed to do that to get to this point. It allows me to escape the mundane, I suppose, of life. And hopefully it allows others to escape the mundane. It's kind of, it's an escape, but it's also like a therapy as well for me. You know, you kind of go into some sort of zone when you're in the studio space where, you know, everything else, well, it doesn't matter, but everything else is kind of inconsequential when you're making the stuff that you want to make, I guess.